This is Zach with MyCodeTeacher.com, and today we're going to be building a Hello World tutorial on the latest SDK. Now, I know MyCodeTeacher has 2 Hello World tutorials, but I think it's important to really do another one to really get a sense of the newest SDK and the latest xCode. So let's go ahead and open up xCode, and this is xCode version 4.2. And so one of the things that you're going to see MyCodeTeacher doing here in the near future is redoing a lot of the videos that we have for the latest xCode, because it's really changed significantly over the past year or two, and it's very important to get a feel for all the tools that they have available. Some better, some I'm still getting used to the change, but it's still very important to learn nonetheless. So let's go ahead and open up xCode here. And we're going to click on Create a New Project. And we're basically going to select a page-based application. Now we can either do that, or we can do a single view application, but we're going to go ahead and select a page-based application because it's very rare that you're just going to have a one view application. So I would just get in the habit of putting a page-based application, especially for a Hello World, because a lot of people like to experiment beyond the Hello World and link multiple pages, or build from our tutorials and build their application more in depth from the Hello World. So let's go ahead and do a page-based application and click Next. And so here we're going to give it a product name. We're just going to call this Hello World. And the company identifier, that's basically, for example, MyCodeTeacher is now owned by Dataware, so we're just going to say Dataware, and then our bundle identifier would be usually com.dataware.helloworld, and that's usually the standard that Apple would recommend. So com dot whatever your company name is dot, and then the name of your application. And we're going to make this an iPhone application. You can make it universal, but in this case we're just going to go ahead and do an iPhone application, and we're going to go ahead and click Next, and we'll save it to the desktop. Okay, so first things first, all of our files are over here on the left side, and this is the project Navigator. And so if you lose this window and you need to get back to it, you can go to View, Navigators, and Project Navigator, or you can press Command 1 and it'll bring it right up. And so that'll allow you to access all your files, get into your frameworks and whatnot. So one of the biggest differences that I've noticed is Apple likes to use a storyboard as opposed to a nib file. And it's pretty much the same thing. I'm going to go ahead and open this up, with one exception. Everything it's designed, as it's called, like a storyboard. So it kind of tells you exactly what's showing up and when, what's connected to what. And the interface builder was similar to that, but it really only showed you one instance at a time of a certain class or of a certain object. And so here we have kind of the entire picture. And so if I were to select something, we'll still be able to access our inspector, which is under Utilities, Show File Inspector. And so all of our objects and everything to add on to our certain views or our pages are still over here. And up here we still have the ability to name our class or to make changes to the properties of a class or a button or a text string or anything along those lines. So but we'll get into that here in a second. So go ahead and X out of this, and what you need to know is we've got our AppDelegate file, which is basically this is what happens when the application needs to call itself for some reason for many different events. So we can see here that the application is resigning from being active. The application did enter the background. The application is entering the foreground. The application became active. If there's anything that you need to do when there's a self event that's called, you can do it in the AppDelegate, unless it's part of maybe another object or another class that you're using and whatnot. So general, generally when the application is launched, you can put your code right in here if you need something to happen at execution time, like setting a label perhaps to say hello world, which we'll do in an advanced hello world tutorial. If you need to set variables to a certain value right at launch point so that they're initialized. If you need to do anything, you could do it right here. There's also a couple of other delegate methods that are part of a certain class, like I believe the RootViewController will have viewDidLoad. So now that's not when the application launches, but you might need to do some initialization of any type of code before a view loads. So you can do that right here on viewDidLoad. Before it's loaded into memory, you want these variables to be this, or you want these Boolean values to be this. Same thing with viewDidUnload. These are all delegate methods that are called when an action is being done to a certain object. Okay, so let's run what we have. We haven't done anything, but let's see what the standard default is. And so you can see it just says January with a big white box. Now, to get familiar, this Hello World tutorial is really about getting familiar with xCode and really understanding the storyboard and everything that goes along with it. So what we want to do is we want to go back into our storyboard, and you can see here that this is the RootViewController. Now a view controller is, or a root view controller, there are view controllers and then there are root view controllers. As you can see here, this is a UI view controller. Now they call it root view controller, and that's not a key word, it's just the name that they gave to the class. But the way that they like to do things is they make a root view controller which controls other view controllers which control views. So the root view controller is responsible for controlling any other view controllers that come in and out on top of the view. So it's kind of like a layer if you think about it. Let's start with the view controller, and then you might understand the view controller better. A view controller will change views for you. So if you have to go to another view, you take the existing view off and you put the other view on. It moves it back and forth for you, so it makes it sort of is the master controller of all views. So it's kind of like the page turner. And the root view controller controls all the view controllers. So for example, if you have a necessity to have multiple different views, possibly in a related category, you might need a root view controller to control other view controllers which control other views. So it's kind of like a hierarchy of views. For example, say you're making an app that needs to categorize plenty of different foods. So you would picture like a root view controller that holds view controllers, and view controller 1 could be for fruits, and view controller 2 could be for vegetables. So if you switch from the root view controller to root view controller 1, that's going to be for the fruits. And the fruits are going to go through multiple pages showing you all kinds of different fruits, but they're all related. So you don't want to mix up the fruits and the vegetables. You need to have a separate category. So when you go back to the root view controller and you want to start looking at the vegetables, then you call the root view or the view controller class number 2, and that will show the vegetables. So you kind of get an idea on why we would need a root view controller to control multiple view controllers, because a lot of people ask, well, why don't we just use one view controller? It's really just for categorizing things. So now, to actually do the point of the application, which is to make a Hello World app, we'll come here, and you see that by default they have put a view on top of a view. Well, we don't really need this, so we're just going to go ahead and delete it. Now, here's our label, and if we wanted to modify this label at code point, we could. We'd have to connect it to code. That's going to be in the advanced Hello World tutorial. But simply what we're just going to do is we're going to double click this label, and we're going to double click this label, and we're going to type Hello World. And we can modify the properties of this Hello World tag by coming up here to our file inspector, and remember that's under View Utilities File Inspector. And we're going to come here to the 4th tab, and you'll see that this is the Attributes Inspector, and we can modify the size. So we're going to say let's make this really big here, and the background, we have to click on the background here. Let's make the Hello World tag a little larger. Click back on the background, and this is part of the UI view, and we're going to go ahead and make this, let's make it white, and let's make it gray. Okay, drag this up here, and you'll notice as you drag things around the view, it tries to line things up for you. It shows you what the center is of both the sides and the tops. So you can see if I move it up, that line goes away, but if I drag it down, it snaps into the center. So that really helps you identify where to position your labels. So go ahead and hit Command S or save it. We'll X out, and we'll start up the simulator here. And so one of the things that you'll notice is that it indeed does not say Hello World. It says January. And the reason that is because it has already pre-connected our labels. And I wanted to show you this because a lot of people get frustrated with this type of project setup because they don't understand what's going on, why they can't just come into the project board and modify text. Because in theory, you should just be able to select a view, drag a label, type in Hello World, save it, and run it. See, there you go. But again, the problem is that Apple has already connected that main label into code. Now this is good because you can see how Apple does this so that we can change future objects that we want to put in our views. So let us go back to the storyboard here, and we'll take this out. So let's see what they've named Hello World. Now we can select Hello World, and it shows your referencing outlets. And right there it's called Data Label, connected to Data View Controller. Which means if I select the Data View Controller, it should also show up as an outlet. So for example, if you want to say, what is this object connected to, you can select the object and it'll show your existing referencing outlets. Or you can say, show me all the outlets connected to, for example, this view. There's none for this view. But if you click on Data View Controller, you see that there's View, which is this, and there's Data Label. Okay, and so now, if we go to our DataViewController.h, we can see right here that there is our data label. It's a type UI label called Data Label, and we see here a keyword IB outlet. That means that this is a class, or this is an object that's going to be connected to IB outlet, and I want you to find it, and I want you to reference it so that I can make changes to it in code. And so over here on the left side, you see a little circle that's filled in. If there were an IB outlet and it were something else, for example, let me change the name of this. It's going to say, hey, there's an issue here, and the circle won't be filled in. Now let me undo that here, and it fills the circle in, which shows that it's connected. Now if you make your own IB outlet, you can select the circle, which will be empty, and you come over here to the storyboard and you select whatever your object is that you want to select. So if it's a type label and you know that this is the code that you want to connect to this certain type of label, then you drag and select the type of label and it'll be connected in code. So we know that data label's connected, which means somewhere, if it's connected to code, it has to be getting changed. So let us go to the DataViewController.m. Now previously in code we had talked about delegate methods, and it looks like, after overviewing all this code, that in the viewWillAppear delegate method they set self.datalabel.text equals to self.dataObjectDescription. So they set it to a description. So let's take that out. In fact, let's just comment out the whole line of code here. We'll save it. And now when we run the application, it should say hello world. And there you go. So, but this could actually be useful because we might not want it to just say hello world. I mean, we can go back in the interface builder and change it, but say we want to put it in code. Well, the code's here, it's already connected. Now in xCode, the syntax is you put an @ sign, 2 quotes, and a semicolon for the string. And let's just say hello world 2 exclamation, save it and run it. And so despite the fact that our interface builder is saying that it should say hello world, the code is changing it to hello world 2. And that's because we've changed it when the view appears. So at runtime, the label is actually hello world, but it's getting changed before you even see it because it's set to change before the view will even appear. And so I think this is important because, one, this tutorial is important, one, because you get a new idea of how the new xCode 4.2 is, and two, you understand that objects can be connected from your storyboard to your code. And with that, you can modify each of the object's properties. For example, the string's text. We can actually modify its color because it's connected. We can modify any aspect or any property of the label that we need to, that Apple gives us access to modify regarding the label. And so I challenge you to, if you're brave, make more labels and connect them in code and see if you can modify their properties. In the next tutorial, we're going to take a UI label, we're going to build it all in code, and we're going to display it on a view all in code, and we're not going to use the interface builder. And I think that's just as important as using the interface builder to know how to do it both ways. And so we'll see you in the next tutorial, and this is Zach from mycodeteacher.com.